So this game, ANVIL Vault Breakers, just dropped on Game Pass in early access yesterday. I've had a few hours with it, so I thought I'd give my first impressions. This isn't a full review or anything like that. We'll have more thoughts on that on the podcast probably next week, but these are just my initial thoughts. Hopefully, this will help you if you're thinking about checking it out. But for now, let's dive in. Firstly, let's talk about game design. There is a story about humanity going to these other planets, finding these things called vaults, and controlling things called breakers, which is basically your characters. They only get stronger when they die. You know, it's a story. Okay, this is a roguelike game, and that story kind of sets that up. You're going to do the same thing over and over again, but you're going to be getting stronger each time. It's a twin-stick shooter or twin-stick melee game, depending on what character or breaker you choose. And for me, it seems like a mix of Hades meets The Ascent, with a little kind of Starship Troopers thrown in there as well. That's great company if that continues, and to be honest, from the start, it seems pretty good. The game seems to handle really well in single player. I played a lot of that, but it seems to be designed probably multiplayer in mind. Don't worry if you haven't currently got friends playing this game, because there is an online matchmaking system. Now again, this is an early access game, so let's not judge it too harshly, but when I did try to play a bit of the multiplayer at the start, I got a bit of this. Let's find some people to play with, lovely stuff, blah blah blah. Oh no, we've been kicked back to the start. So it did take a few attempts, but I did get in there. I did manage to play some multiplayer, worked really well. And that footage is more towards the end of the video. Anyway, let's talk about combat. It really does pack a punch. Delivers in a very similar way to Hades, kind of with that. It's got basic attacks, skill attacks on cooldown, but loads of skill attacks, really. Every sub-area you clear has like a purchase build improvement place, so you can build up your character. And there's hell of a lot of these upgrades. You get so many because you have so many of these sub-areas that you visit. That's left me thinking, with every run I've done so far, I've got a really cool build here. There seems to be massive variety in the weapons that you can pick up, and even within each individual character, or the breaker, so there seems to be a lot to build your run with. So there are 3 current planets. The environments, from what I've played, actually vary quite a bit, and so do the enemies, but the general enemies in each area will obviously repeat each run. The bosses, however, do vary up massively. Even in the first area, I have rarely kind of repeated a boss, and that's just great, especially when you're starting out. When you do eventually die, you go back to the hub area and you can buy new skills and upgrades for kind of permanent boosts and unlock new characters to try. There are currently 12 at this point. They seem really different from what I've played. The ones that I've got, they play very differently, different weapons, different skills, and there's a lot to practice with. Right, so a couple of things to note, I think. I do think this game is probably going to be really multiplayer focused. It's going to be a big thing, mainly to vary up the repetitive kind of nature of doing the same thing, but also the environments, like, they do change up. Like I said, you might be in the snow, you might be in kind of a forest type thing, or the desert, but the main thing is that it's not graphically intense. Like, I'm running it on very high settings on PC. It's not amazing looking. The effects are quite cool, but it may not be enough to vary it up enough. What does vary it is multiplayer. So I do think that's a really interesting thing that they're throwing in on like a roguelike game. Hades has shown how roguelike games could operate with storyline. Like, the storytelling in Hades is amazing outside of the combat. Now, this game seems to tell its story in an intro cutscene, which is much of a muchness, and really relies on the fact that there are so many characters, there are different builds, that you can get involved like that you can feel like you're in on one character, I guess. And so it doesn't feel like it needs to like flesh out the story as much. Because that story isn't quite there, you don't really know how that replayability is going to pan out. But saying that, this game is doing exactly what it's setting out to do. I really do like the feel of this game. The weapons, the characters, it feels very good. It seems very simple in what the game is trying to do, but complex in terms of its builds. There does seem to be enough to keep players coming back for the moment. This is definitely one I think to keep our eyes on. If you've got Game Pass, it's definitely worth a download. We just don't know how this is going to play out long term, I think. But remember, it's early access, so a lot can happen to this game, and from what I've seen, I quite like it. I'm definitely ready to put a few more hours into it. If you've enjoyed this impressions video, then please let us know, because we'll do more of them. And like and subscribe, that really helps the video. We also have a weekly podcast called Grumpy Gamers, which comes out every Wednesday, everywhere that you download your podcasts. So please check us out. For now, GG.